Hi everyone. Today I'm connecting from United States, Maryland, my research lab, and I am really excited to be in here and make this fire chat with the incredible person we met, the Dr. Sangeeta Bhatia, a biomedical researcher, MIT professor, and inventor in biotech as an entrepreneur. She's adopting the technologies to enhance human health, and actually she is generating the devices like tiny technologies to diagnose the health problems with the yielding like nanoparticles, human macrolivers, and nanoporous materials that can be engineered to diagnose. And like as an inspiring inventor and passionate advocate for diversity in science and engineering, she had many honors. Like she got many medals for that. She has received many medals like Lemelson MIT Prize, known as the Oscar for Inventors, and Heinz Medal for being like groundbreaking inventions and like advocacy in women in STEM. And actually, she's now like Howard Hughes Medical Institute director, institute investigator, and director for the Marble Center at Koch Institute. And actually, she has trained like over 150 students. She has more than 200 peer-reviewed journals, and she is pending and has accepted 50 patents. As a YGA family, like we met with Dr. Sangeeta Bhatia, thanks to one of our dream partners, Mehmet Töner. We always keep saying that like we are working and discovering with our like dream partners, and thanks to Mehmet Abi, we met with Dr. Sangeeta Bhatia, and it is great like sign for us to for our role model dream partners. They're always keeping us to connecting great people, great like works. So thanks to Mehmet Abi, I am delighted to introduce her and this great person, Dr. Sangeeta Bhatia. Welcome.
Hi, merhaba.
Merhaba. Like it is really exciting to see that. Like to be honest, it is my honor to like being here because of like 2 years ago I came across with your works. As a point, I am that like I am trying to decide what to do. I am in the point that deciding being entrepreneur, academician, like or like etc. But then I came across your works and see that like how it's possible to being both being great academician, like exemplary like entrepreneur, and also like like great advocacy for women, like etc. It's really great to be in here. So like let us kick things off. I want to like start with my questions. This year, the one of themes for 5J Summit is to the new solution prevention, and your work on like preventing, understanding, and treating diseases to liver cancer and acquired infections is a great example for that. So like how did it all begin? Like how and when did you like know you wanted to be a scientist? What is your primary motivation to work?
Yeah, these are great questions. For me, I was always really curious about the way the world works, and mostly just knew that I wanted to make an impact, not so much how I was going to do that. And so I had one of my parents, my father, really pointed me towards the field of engineering. And at the time, engineering involved micro and nano fabrication, which is the way you make computer chips. And so as I was studying that, I was always thinking about how could I use these tools to address really important problems. And so it wasn't like I knew that I was going to do this in high school, but I sort of just kept studying what was in front of me and doing a good job, and then trying to think about how to make that impactful. And it wasn't until, about 10 years ago, I would say, that I got really interested in early detection and prevention of cancer, because my lab is in a cancer institute. And actually, most people do research on curing cancer, on treating advanced cancer. And it makes sense. It's great that we have those therapies coming. But it turns out that actually 2/3 of cancer deaths could be addressed by early detection and prevention. So I started thinking more and more about how we could use these engineering tools that I had been working on for those kinds of applications. And then I guess even more than that, I've been sort of dreaming about how could we do early cancer detection in kind of in a resource poor settings. So what if you didn't have steady electricity? What if you didn't have access to cancer doctors? How could we bring these tools really around the world? And so those ideas have driven some of our recent inventions.
Like, it is really great to like see that, but I want to ask like a bit specific questions, because I know that like researching is always like failing and learning from failure, and then you're at the end of trying to find the answer for it. So like, can you a bit give an example for that? Like, do you have like what are your failure, what you learn from them, and now like what makes you to like in the case of in the edge of the finding like solutions for early detection?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the really specific thing, we work on nanomaterials in my lab, so nanoparticles. And we had a project where we were trying to make a better imaging method for cancer that was growing, so invasive cancer. We had made some magnetic nanoparticles, and we thought that they would change their signal in an MRI machine when the cancer was invasive. And what the students noticed was that whenever we did this experiment, that we actually found a signal in the urine, in the bladder. And what we realized when we did those experiments, that actually we had found a way to get a signal out of the body from these nanoparticles and in the urine, and we wouldn't need actually an MRI machine. And so that was kind of the aha moment. And then we started thinking about, oh, if you could just do a urine test for cancer, then you wouldn't need expensive instrumentation. Maybe you could even do it like on a paper strip, like a COVID test. And that was kind of how it got started.
Great. And also like you mentioned about like the motivation to finding the problem, and you have talked about creating an impact. And like as far as like I can know that like creating impact also involves to make it reachable for all person. So like what is your thoughts about like to make it reachable and make it like health opportunity to everyone? Like what are you thinking, and what are you doing for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, if you think about prevention, one thing that's, when you think about the way we do cancer screening in the US and in Turkey as well, there are a few cancers that we screen for example, mammography for breast cancer or colonoscopy for colon cancer. And those are very common but expensive methods that also require hospital infrastructure and physicians. And so when we realized we had this kind of urine test, we thought, well, what about this kind of more democratized access to cancer screening? What if we could make a urine test that you could actually have in a remote location, and you could make it on paper? Maybe you could take a picture of it with your smartphone, and then you could communicate kind of remotely with a provider. That would potentially kind of transform cancer screening kind of in the way that smartphones have changed all of our lives through distribution. So that sort of started us on a journey, not just of like the invention, but thinking about how do we get this vision, this dream actually to patients. And so we actually started a company, a startup, to help with those next steps after kind of the initial invention.
Yeah, like it is really crucial to seeing that you are trying collectively, like combining your works and people, and you are trying to share with the people to make it like reachable everyone. Then you are creating impact, and people are trying to follow you, your works, and your students actually. So I want to move the second question. Like you are not only a like role model scientist, but also an entrepreneur. Like in YGA, like we focused on like entrepreneurs to like who identify social problems and set ambitious goals to solve them. And one problem, like you are passionate about the solving the underrepresentation of women in science and entrepreneurship. Why do you think it is so crucial?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've actually worked my whole career on trying to increase representation of girls and women in engineering because they are underrepresented. Only 17% of biomedical engineers are women, and only a few percent of startup founders are actually women. So this starts actually in middle school. So around the age of 11 to 13, that women start to drop out of these professions, and people call this the pipeline of talent in the field. So it's sort of this continuous kind of leaky pipeline where people start to drop out around age 11, and then more in high school, and then more in college, and so on and so forth. So I've been interested in this problem since I was a student, and since I noticed my women engineering colleagues dropping out kind of quietly of the profession in college. And I most recently got interested in entrepreneurship because, as I said, I had started this company to try and bring this technology to patients. And I really experienced very few women kind of around me that were doing the same thing. Very few women professors, very few women in the room of venture capitalists where I was pitching to raise the money, very few executives and so on. And so I, together with some colleagues, did a study to actually quantify, how many women there were and whether it was changing over time. And we actually calculated that there were, just from MIT over the last 20 years, there were 40 missing companies, given how many women faculty there are and what the potential was. And so we've been trying to devise solutions to that.
Yeah, actually, this is the thing also I am admiring, that instead of we are just complaining and preaching about this problem, you are also acted on it, right? And could you tell us about the Future Founders initiative that you made?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking. The Future Founders initiative emerged from, actually, I think it's always helpful when you're trying to make change to collect people around you that are like-minded and have a different perspective. And so I worked with two people. One person her name is Susan Hockfield, and she's the former president of MIT, and she's an amazing life scientist and leader. And another one is a woman named Nancy Hopkins, who was really a pioneer in gender equity change, starting with a study that she did in the 90s, and she'd always been a hero of mine. And so we started working on entrepreneurship. The three of us got together and said, how can we study this? And we generated the data that I mentioned. And then let's think about how to change it. And social change is hard because you have a lot of hypotheses about what you need to change, and you may not, if you're a scientist, you may not actually have definitive data to show that a particular intervention is going to change things. So the way I like to think about it is, as an engineer, you kind of have to hack it. You have to kind of do experiments as you go and collect data and see what's working. And so that's what we've been doing. So our idea was that perhaps women were disconnected from the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We could see in the data that they weren't on boards of directors, which are the organization that runs a company, and they weren't being asked to be co-founders. So none of the companies that had been co-founded at MIT had women in them. They were always the men co-founding with each other. And so our idea was to start initiatives to address these things. So we worked with the local venture capitalists community to make a pledge that they would diversify their boards of directors with a quantitative target to 25% in 2 years. And then we started an incentive prize competition where we would have women faculty participate in kind of a pitch competition, and the winner would win a big cash prize, as well as be made very highly visible in the community. And also through the course of the competition, we would teach them how to be entrepreneurs, and then all the women that were participating would develop sort of a cohort effect, and they could help each other. So all these sort of dimensions of the program are things that we are really experimenting on to try and increase the number of women entrepreneurs, and we'll try and take the most successful pieces and scale it. I mean, our idea is that if this can work at MIT, then it could work, and we could kind of replicate it in universities around the country and around the world.
Yeah, and also I think that you are looking in the point of the upside version of it, because of that, instead of just saying that we underrepresented, women are underrepresented in science and entrepreneurship, we are also trying to make it that if we are leveraging this and we can replicate all over the world, then we are increasing the impact, right? And this is also crucial because of that. It is a great example of that. We are learning from our experiences, we are learning from the learnings data science, but also learning from role models. Then you are creating a chain of that, and then you're trying to make together experiment, make it reachable everyone. And also if the women's also we can increase the number of women in entrepreneurship and they are trying to create impact on it, then I think that the world is more positive than we thought. And it is not that far away. It is really like with us. So it is great to see that you are one of the supporter, but also you are actor on it. So like I'm really like excited to see that point. So and also I know
Yeah,
that like bank.
and
Sorry.
no, I was just going to add that I think that the exciting thing about potentially this approach is that there have been a lot of conversations over the years about how we can diversify our industry. And one thing that I realized when I was an entrepreneur is that instead of having a conversation about how you climb the corporate ladder, if you create the company in your own vision, then you can make it diverse from the very first step. And so I think this is kind of an accelerator for diversifying our industry potentially, because all the companies I've started have been 50-50 women in the boardroom and in the C-suite and so on. So I think we can pull in more talent and more minds to make better medicines.
Exactly. Like it is also like diverse, like because of diverse, because they are bringing their values, they are in their life, and also you are helping them to unleash their potential with the way you are looking for, and it makes us to like see all over like differences in the world, and we can just solve the problems on that. So like as an entrepreneur, I also know that like you need to like work with like sponsors. As a scientist, you need to work with researchers and some like institutes also. So, like, could you give us an example, like an active mentor sponsor to whom you are grateful?
Yeah, well, you mentioned him earlier. So my mentor, and who really functioned as a sponsor, and I'll explain that term in a second, was Mehmet Toner. He was, he changed my life. He trained me in sort of how to think as a scientist, but also took a really active interest in my career development. He saw more for me than I could see for myself at that stage in development. And if I would express an interest, and when I was training with him, I told him I was interested in industry, he would bring me around. He would say, okay, I'm working with this company, come with me. And he would introduce me and put his name behind me and kind of amplify my visibility. And that's really, what an active mentor or a sponsor can do. So I'm, forever grateful to him. And I think the happy news is that, we've stayed friends and colleagues. And over the years, I actually even had his son in my lab, which is, a small way to be able to give back.
Like it is also like great to seeing that like in the research environment. I am also seeing that like I think there are two way, like either you are competing, either you are collaborating. It is all about how you position yourself, how you think about that. So like you are mentioning about the collaboration of it, but not collaboration. You are really like just close friends. You are also sharing tasks, you are like sharing everything. And then like it is impossible to seeing like being a role model because of like you are really living it. And like we are also learning a lot from Mehmet abi, but like it is really good to seeing that like how you are combining like your thoughts and how he is like impacted your life. Now we are talking with your works, inspired your works, and like many of the people are inspired for that. And also this again creates a chain of rule, right? And I have like a great host here. Like we recently met with like great successful scientists and businesswomen who feels the same for you actually, like because like she's successfully taken her PhD with supervision of you, and she worked with like and contributed a lot to growing the human malaria parasites in dormant form in a first way, and now she's working with Bain and Company as a consultant. So welcome, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, she's a superwoman, as you probably gathered by now. I still remember kind of the first day that I heard her speak. She lit up the room, talked about inspiring, innovative ideas, and her energy was infectious. And just knowing how rare it is to see women in positions of power, especially in academia, kind of gave me this sense of joy and hope for the future. I learned a ton from her over the years, but I think like her biggest gift to me was, how do you instill this trusting mentor-mentee relationship in someone? So I kind of watched from one of the best, and I think I learned a ton from her in that.
Great. Can you give an example for the like again like seeing the upside? Sometimes in a like research environment we are failing again and we are learning from it. Like what is the point for that you think that you learned a lot and you look the upside version of it together? Like can you give an example for that?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a few. One is, I think the way that Sangeeta mentors is kind of unique. So the first thing I always think about is she absolutely lets you fail, and she lets you fail early so that then you learn from your mistakes. So you know that she always has your back. One example I think of is for my PhD, as you mentioned, I was working on human malaria. So I traveled to Thailand quite a bit. And my very first trip, 2 months, 9 out of 10 experiments failed. I mean, it was awful. But then at the end of it, I kind of called her up and I said, look, Sangeeta, let me stay another week. Like, I know it's been rough, but let me stay another week and I think we can get this. And she said, absolutely, go for it. And I went for it. And that was kind of the data that started my PhD, got us funding from the Gates Foundation, and then kicked off really exciting research for the next 3 years. So that's one, is she really lets you fail, so you learn from it. The second one is she really encouraged me to have more faith in myself. So the way she was talking about Mehmet Toner, believing in her and seeing more in her, I think she absolutely passed that on to me. And she's always treated me like a colleague. I think at the end of your PhD, you kind of look and you say, oh, I'm expected to be a colleague to all these professors in the room now who are experts. And I think she's able to like instill that in you very early on. And then finally, I think one of the most valuable things for me is that our interpersonal relationship, she's not just a scientific mentor, but also a life mentor. So you can go to her and talk about a scientific project, but then the conversation goes into your personal life and your life aspirations. So those are things that I really value in our relationship.
Yeah, it is great. Like, it is double wing actually, like in terms of like research, in terms of life, then you are looking the way that how do you unleash your potential, how do you see your potential, because of like you're experiencing it. Sometimes we feel alone in this way because of like we are working a lot and we are focused maybe at some point a lot, and like it is good to see how you like get out of the box, see the like greater version. Then like you are just came across with great like works. Now we are sharing with works, maybe like we'll see soon the effects of it. It is really great to like Neil to sharing with this actually, because of like what we are generally talking about the being role models, but it is great to see examples of it. Then we are understanding the definition of the role model actually. Like Sangeeta is one of them, and thank you for your to sharing this one. And actually, like we are a bit like approaching that, but I want to get the final remarks about the conversation, Dr. Bhatia. Like, can you give us the like what are your thoughts at the end? Like, what are the things you want to add at this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I'd like to just note is that, first of all, mentoring and role models can be different. So you can look across the community and see somebody that you want to be, and they may or may not be the person that is mentoring you directly, and that's okay. You can sort of like collect role models and mentors. And then the other is this idea that you're constantly paying it forward. So, Mehmet mentored me and I'm mentoring Neil. And these are all really relationships. It's not a transaction. And so we are all in each other's lives, and it's actually bi-directional. As a mentor, you receive as much as you give. And hopefully you can see that from this kind of continuum of recognizing that Mehmet trained me and I trained Neil, and I know that Neil will pay it forward as well.
Great, actually, like I am really like grateful for the work that like we are now seeing that like 2 years ago I just came across with your work. Now we are talking about the experiences for that, and I believe that many people are watching with us now, and we are sharing with this like exciting moments for that, and we'll see the results like very soon. I think that we are started to affect again people in the point of view of like being entrepreneur, in the point of being a great scientist. Now we are talking about how to create an impact, and we define that at the full of the conversation, and it is all about being a great mentor, and we are creating the chain for that. So like let's see how we affect the effects of it, and we look upside of it. Thank you for being here and devoting your precious time, Dr. Sangeeta Bhatia. Thank you, Neil, to sharing these like examples for that. Thank for all of them.
Thank you.
Thanks.